Coming to Western Canada is always a great time. It's amazing how vast North America is. Revy, we've arrived. Staying for 4 days of sledding at the Glacier House is ideal. It's right on a trailhead, which means it's easy access to the backcountry. Revelstoke, BC is about 350 miles from Vancouver. From Idaho Falls, it was a 13-hour drive for most of us, but well worth it. The scenery is incredible. On day one, we geared up with some of the best riders from out west. Mason, Steve, and Richard, who followed Jack, Colin, and me up here. Nadine Overwater is from the area and promises to introduce us and our cameraman Phil to some of the most iconic scenery out there and a safe day of riding. Rest assured, Revelstoke is made for riding. Woo!
Revelstoke goes back to 1885 with the coming of the Canadian Pacific Railway through here. That's really what established the town. We got our name from a British lord, Lord Revelstoke, who was the head of Barings Bank in England. The first snowmobile that I'm aware of was one in 1948, and in 1968 the Revelstoke Snowmobile Club was formed, and they've been active ever since. As the machines developed, they started to develop more backcountry areas. They're probably one of the largest snowmobile clubs around now.
The Revelstoke Museum archives information on avalanche science and safety. It makes sense because Revy is also home to Avalanche Canada.
Avalanche Canada was incepted in 2004. It's a one-stop shop for members of the recreating public to come and get information that they need and products and services that will help them if they go into avalanche terrain. You've got to be prepared. You've got to get the gear, you've got to get the forecast, and you've got to get the training to know how to use all of that properly. We're all mountain users, and some of us are sledders, some of us are skiers, but what we have in common is our passion for the mountains. We love to go as far as we can, under the right conditions, and we obviously love to come home as well.
So it was way cool to start off down here, meet Nadine, just cruising up the trail. As we gained elevation, I think it was about 4,000 feet or so, we started breaking through the clouds. Nadine kept talking about an inversion, and sure enough, we broke through about 4,000. It was just pure bluebird and pretty neat feeling coming up over the ridge and seeing the great big mountains here in Revelstoke.
I've been in Revelstoke for 10 years now. This is my 10th season. Snowmobiling since I was pretty much knee-high to a grasshopper. I started mountain riding in 2007 when I got my first sled, and I was using it to get snowboard access into the backcountry. And from there, I started leaving the snowboard behind, and then you're just sledding every day, and before you know it, you're hooked. This place is amazing. It's attracting people from all over, and people that are pursuing active lifestyles, want to be in the mountains, want to be on their bikes, want to be outdoors, and that's what makes me love it here. It was super fun riding with the boys. It's always the people that are from the flatlands that are ready to go get after it. Those guys can ride really well. They have their head on them. They were asking questions about the avalanche conditions and holding back, and it was really cool and really respectful group of guys, and I look forward to riding with them again. Welcome to Revy, boys! Woo! Had an awesome day riding with the Boondock Nation boys, but don't forget, there's all kinds of other activities here in Revy, so stay tuned.
In addition to snowmobiling, Revelstoke, BC provides a host of winter activities from mild to wild.
We're renowned for our champagne powder, steep and deep tree skiing, and we've got the highest vertical in North America at just over 1,700 meters. We've got 4 alpine bowls and over 3,000 acres of terrain to explore, and people are never disappointed when they come here. It's a great place to ski. If you're skiing here for the first time, Chances are your legs are going to be pretty tired after the first day, so there's lots of other activities you can do. We've got snowshoeing tours. We've hooked up with Great Canadian Snowmobile Tours, and they offer a nighttime snowmobile ride. We've got dog sledding, paragliding, so lots of things you can do to kind of rest your legs and check out the views and the scenery around here.
Revelstoke has an incredible downtown to complement its outdoor activities. Jack and I decided to rest our legs from snowmobiling for a bit and use them in a different way, on a walking tour of Revy's cool stores and restaurants. Colin stayed back to shred with Richard and the guys.
So this year on Boondock Nation Season 3, I was super stoked to come up here. I mean, last year we came up to CKMP in Sycamoose, but this year we're in Revelstoke, and it's similar, but it's different in a sense. We're riding with a bunch of new people and meeting a lot of new people, which is really cool. Each person has their own riding style, and just by watching people, you can learn a lot.
Day 2 was a little more socked in. It was kind of snowing on us, so we stuck to the thick trees. We had a great time pulling on some skis and doing some rowdy things. We found some good cliffs that we were able to drop. Seeing all the 360 view of the mountain peaks and mountain tops, it was a pretty humbling experience. You feel so small with the mountains here in Revelstoke.
Send it! Just push the throttle, don't think about it. Don't think, just do.
Situated on the banks of the Columbia River, Revelstoke is a quaint but energized Canadian town of 7,500 people. That number swells to about 12,000 people in the winter because of all that it has to offer. On our trek across downtown, Jack and I landed upon the perfect spot to try some local food. We discovered River City Pub, a third-generation Italian-owned joint. Sure, it's about the food like fish tacos and chicken parm, but it's also about the people and great service. Revy attracts lots of Australian and British hospitality workers who provide attentive service and enjoy sledding and skiing on their days off. After lunch, coffee at the Modern Bake Shop and Cafe. Stay tuned, Boondock Nation will be right back. Even hardcore boondockers like to take a break and check out the area off our sleds. On this trip, we found another source of an adrenaline rush. Revy does coffee right.
Well, we were drinking a lot of coffee back in the day, and there was no one really roasting it in town here, so we kind of saw an opportunity. Most of the cafes, or a lot of the cafes, were serving, food service coffee that had been roasted and ground months before, and we found a roaster, a used roaster, and brought it in and got started. We bring in bags of coffee here. We weigh out green coffee on the scale there, throw it into the roaster, roast it up, it comes out, cools down. So we destone it and put it in a weigh fill, goes straight to the sealer from there, and then you got a bag of coffee ready to go. I get coffee from all around the world. We got Central American, South American coffees, African coffees. We try not to overwhelm people, but it's nice to get some different subtleties in there just to make things interesting. Having great coffee is just a lot of fun.
Then it was back to sledding. We got out there with Caleb Kesterke, and that guy is a ripper.
I kind of grew up riding up here. My dad used to take trips up here and I'd take along. And then I've rode a lot the last couple of years, just coming up for a week at a time or so, and I probably have 7-8 days up here so far this season. I've really liked the variation of terrain and the snow. It was a lot of fun trying to push up some gullies and riding some cliff bands. I really enjoy just pushing straight out the gut of something until you make it up to the top.
As night came around, the snow continued to fall, promising another great day in the backcountry. Mark from Stoked Coffee told us to check out Mount Bigbee Brewing Company, so we did. There we met Darren, who knows his beer and was happy to show us around.
Mount Bigbee Brewing was started in 1996 here in Revelstoke in a small brew house downtown. It moved once to our last location on First Street, and since then we've had the need to expand into this location, which we've been in for only 1 year. This new brewery is double the size, triple the capacity, a lot of state-of-the-art equipment, cool technologies that a lot of little, small microbreweries don't have. We are a 30 hectoliter brew house, so we do 3,000 liter batches. Our first beer was the cream ale, and shortly after that we introduced a few of the others like our Kolsch and our pale ale. The one thing that's new for us, obviously, is the tasting room. It's the first time we've had a tasting room, a proper tasting room. Everybody wants to come to the source for fresh beer. The great thing about it is that we actually have a beautiful view of Mount Bigbee. We're overlooking Revelstoke on the skyline. You know, there's bear prints on the concrete here because a bear walked in when the floors were being poured. It's a cool setting for sure. Lots of wildlife, beautiful mountains, and you can't beat Revelstoke for that kind of stuff. One of the cool things that goes with beer, obviously, is pretzels, and we do a really unique, cool little pretzel here where we use the grains from the beer, and we actually have a dipping sauce made with our Nasty Habit IPA. So now we have a restaurant and a nice little tapas bar, so you can get some appies and some really yummy food to pair with your different styles of beer. So it's actually really fun place to come and eat. You know, it's such a booming culture. It's growing so fast, and everybody really enjoys trying new craft beers and trying new things that are coming out. It's always changing, it's always progressing, there's always something new to try. You never get bored in this business, it's super fun, and hey, it's beer, like, what's not to love, right?
It's clear why Mount Bigbee is voted Canadian Craft Brewery of the Year, year after year. Great coffee, award-winning beer, could it get any better than this? You'll see it can when we show you more of Revy from the backcountry. Our final day in Revy was destined for greatness as we planned to ride with Colton Olstad, and it only got better with a surprise visit from our buddy Duncan Lee.
Last week, actually, I was down in Montana teaching some avalanche education for snowmobilers, and I had some time off, so I was looking around where to go ride. Looked like Revy was kind of going off. They got low snowpack, but I noticed my buddy Philip was up there, and so I reached out and said, "Hey Phil, what's going on? What are you doing in BC?" And he said he was shooting with the Boondock Nation, and I was pretty fired up to actually see if they wanted me to show up and come shred with the guys and help contribute to the program. First day out with these guys, and it was a lot of fun. Grabbed some pretty epic riding in the evening. The sky was on fire. There was sucker holes, there were clouds, it was snowing. You could see town, the Columbia River is just super beautiful. And I mean, it doesn't get much better when you're shredding POW, looking at views like that, and you're in some of the best terrain in the world. Another local from CKMP was out, Colton Olstad. The kid is on fire. He is so much fun to ride with, super chill and mellow and just fit right in with everybody. It was so much fun watching him. He's just this amazingly talented dude, and he was ripping.
We really had some great riding here. After packing up our gear for our next Boondock adventure, Colin and I decided to call it a day and enjoy the Glacier House.
So the resort's been around since 1999. It's got 16 lodge rooms. There's 10 cabins. They all have hot tubs. You can ride straight from the door in the wintertime. And then on top of that, we've got Great Canadian Snowmobile Tours that runs out of here as well. Great Canadian is basically a tour operator for Glacier House Resort. We have access to 7 different mountains and averaging about 70,000 hectares that we can take you to. Before I had this business, I had a pub back in Australia for 20 years. I was the head chef there. So when I came out here, I noticed one of the issues with the business was the restaurant downstairs. So we've sort of corrected that a little bit, and we've changed the menu. We're catering to sledders, have big meals, have pulled pork, and we think about the menu as well for our lunch packages. We make sure that we give you the right meals that you need throughout the day. And then obviously we give you a full breakfast, so full American breakfast.
While we chilled, Jack snuck out and discovered Trapper snowboards, handmade right here in Revelstoke.
So Trapper Snowboards, how did it all start?
Well, I guess in 2011, I'd cut one of my old snowboards in half to get into split boarding, and I kind of figured out little bits and pieces of how to do the process, and found enough information, and I said, screw it, start from scratch.
That's very cool. So what's the company like today?
We're still pretty small. We make less than 200 boards a year, sell out every year, and it's just kind of fun making a whole quiver of what I like to ride, and then one in every size for every size rider.
So tell me about the process of making a snowboard.
It's pretty much the same process as skis, but here what we do is we start all with local lumber that we get from local sawmills. All the trees are actually harvested within a 100-kilometer radius of Revelstoke for the most part. So we pick up the wood. There's a bit of a process doing that. Glue it into big blocks. There's some shaping process with the CNC router, some urethane resins. From there, it gets shaped again on the CNC router. Then the other parts that get built in the shop are the base material, bending edges to attach that. And then everything goes in the press room and it gets all squished together using a bunch of epoxy resin. And that's the Tro Trap.
So while we've been up in the mountains, we've seen tons of snowmobilers heading up with snowboards strapped to the back. What's the snowboard scene like here in Revelstoke?
Well, it's definitely taken off in the last decade, I suppose, just about a decade, 9 years now. Powder is definitely what's drawn everybody to Revelstoke, and when people hear Revelstoke that aren't from here, the first thing that comes to mind for them is powder and Big Mountain. And then over the few years, the ski hills developed. They've put in a park. They've got a little bit more better grooming program. They got some new groomers this year, but it's really still a Big Mountain powder type scene. It's been nice. There's been a real resurgence of small manufacturers, and you're seeing more and more of the boards on the hill every year. You know, it's like, these things are from Revelstoke. You know, I love riding powder. I like Big Mountain, or you know, like everybody has a different way to connect to something, and I feel like small manufacturers really bring that connection together.
Well, thanks so much for showing me around, Greg. It's great to see people like you that are so committed to the Revelstoke community.
You bet. Thanks, Jack. Everybody's just giving it their all.
Western Canada is defined by its incredible snow and terrain, cool people, and their commitment to avalanche safety. It was the perfect place for all of us to gather and ride. We will cross over the border again, and it promises to be equally as awesome. But for now, our trip was complete with great memories shared with great friends.